I'm Emma.
And I'm Joy.
And this is Crash Course Literature.
On today's segment, we will be talking about Crusades and Revolution literature.
Love literature from the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of holy wars against Islam led by popes and fought by religious fanatics for the Holy Land. Most literature during the Crusades were either speeches or journals about their life. Most literature about the Crusades were not written during the Crusades because documentation during that time was not the main worry. The main worry was to reclaim the Holy Land. The Crusades also made a great impact on the expansion of literature, art, and ideas.
One speech that was well known during that time period was Pope Urban II's speech on November 27, 1095. Pope Urban II made a speech to the Christians in Europe to war against Muslims in order to reclaim the Holy Land. It was known as the speech that launched the First Crusade. In his speech, he called on the Christian knights to stop fighting each other and to battle the unbelievers.
Not all literature during the Crusades time period were known. The poem, The Song of Roland, was not as well known. It was an epic poem based on the Battle of Roxanax in 778, during the reign of Charlemagne. It was most likely written around 1100 by a Norman poet. No one really knows the true author. People believe that the most probable author of the Song of Roland was a person named Harold, because his name was introduced in its last line. It is known to be the oldest surviving major work of French literature.
Out here. Some literature during the Crusades were to explain lives during the Crusades. One of them was The Travels of Ibn Jubar. In this, he wrote about his accounts of his journey through Crusader states. This became a valuable source for the history of that time. It contained memorable descriptions of his voyages across the Mediterranean in Genoese ships, his unhappy encounters with both Christian and Muslim custom collectors, the Cairo of Saladin, his trip up the Nile to Upper Egypt and across the Red Sea to Jeddah, Mecca, and Medina.
Alexiad by Anna Komnene was a piece of literature about the life and reign of her father. It became a valuable source of the pro-Byzantine account of the early Crusades, but also it helped others to picture the religious and intellectual activities within the empire during the early Crusades.
Literature during the Crusades and the Revolution both impacted their time period. The American Revolution was the war between Great Britain and the American colonies, by which the colonies won their independence. Great Britain started taxing the American colonies on tea, which led to the revolt against the British, the Boston Tea Party, in 1773. Other problems in this occurred, which led to the colonists wanting their independence. Literature during the Revolution impacted the colonists' way of getting their independence.
One speech that led a way for the colonists
Is this Biology 101? No? Okay.
One speech that led a way for the colonists' independence was well known as the Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech, but it was really named the Speech in the Virginia Convention. It was written on March 23, 1775 by Patrick Henry. The reason for his speech was to convince the delegates to secede from Britain, moreover to fight back against them. His speech was to state the fact that the British was not there to help protect the colonists, but to enforce British colonial rule. Government's first duty is to protect the people, not run their lives.
One piece of documentation that was well known after the Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech was the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration was written by Thomas Jefferson and adopted by the Second Continental Congress. It summarized the colonists' motivations for seeking independence. The people didn't want to change their government without a good reason, which is the reason why they suffered as long as they could under the government they had. After having problems for a long time, they decided to become independent from the British. The 13 American colonies finally gained their independence from Great Britain on July 4th, 1776.
This made the way for more literature being written to tell the many things going on during the Revolution. The Crisis was written by Thomas Paine during the American Revolution on December 23, 1776. His works helped shape many of the ideas that marked the age of revolution. Through his works, he showed his ongoing support for an independent and self-governing America through the many severe crises of the Revolutionary War. He defined the problems and struggles with Britain, but also argued them for that matter. He showed how the people no longer wanted to be under the unfairness of the British monarchy. He wanted to make his speech more than just a war support for independence.
Not all literature during the Revolution was written from men. Women also had famous literature that impacted the revolution too. One of those women was Phyllis Wheatley. Phyllis Wheatley had a rough life. She was kidnapped from West Africa and enslaved. She was one of the first women to publish a book of poetry in the colonies. She wrote 2 poems that she was known for during that time: An Hymn to the Evening and to His Excellency General Washington. Wheatley's poems reflected several influences on her life. An Hymn to the Evening was a poem that she wrote where she tries to explain beauty in everything in life. To His Excellency General Washington was a poem that she wrote praising the appointment of Washington as the commander of the Continental Army. However, she felt that slavery was the issue that prevented the colonists from achieving true heroism.
I'm Joy. And I'm Emma. And this was Crash Course Literature.
Hope you enjoyed this.
That was my line.
Are you sure this isn't Biology 1?
No! Get out!